Welcome back, everybody, to the All Things NBA from A to Z podcast. I'm Kris Pursiainen, presented by Ball is Life, as always. And today I am joined by a special guest, someone who has a basketball show of their own. It's one that I'm fond of, and it's one that I am excited to now say I've collaborated with. So there you go. There's that. From the YKB, the You Know Ball podcast, we got TrillBroDude, a.k.a. Trill, in the building to talk Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, first of all, what's up? How's offseason going? How's
going well so far? Cannot complain. This has been a weird offseason. It hasn't been like a traditional, we got this trade, we got this free agent signing here. It feels like it's been more chaotic than your normal offseason because of this new CBA and teams adjusting to it. And now we're getting buyouts of like genuinely good NBA players, like starter level players, and it's been interesting. We got another trade today. I mean, people have complained a lot about the death of free agency, and I understand why, but I think that just makes it so that the trades are more exciting. And like the fact that we're getting DeAndre Ayton and Bradley Beal and Damian Lillard and all these guys hitting free agency, a year or two earlier than they normally would due to these massive contracts, it's at least an interesting wrinkle. And draft night was awesome. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this offseason. My thing has basically been that the Luka trade broke all of our brains and that everyone is now, chasing the dragon, but for the Luka trade, and we'll never get another night like that. So I think everyone was bound to be a little bit disappointed no matter what happened this offseason after we got that at the trade deadline. So
it's funny. We're coming up on Summer League now. I think the most, besides being at my cousin's house in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and being the only person out of like the 30 people in that house that even knew or cared about the Kevin Durant to Golden State news dropping. And I felt like I was going insane because it's like I'm the only one in there who even understands what that means. It's like a bunch of like doctors and like
that's a big one.
Yeah. But other than that, I feel like, okay, sure. Where I was, I remember exactly where I was, what was going on when the Luka trade happened. But the night of Zion Williamson ripping the ball out of Kevin Knox's arms, and then in his and RJ's debut, and then an earthquake ends the game.
And what a weird night that was. That was another one.
Everyone's like reeling from that, being like, I was at an NBA game that got canceled by an earthquake. Like Zion Williamson debut, and he was dunking, and then earthquakes happen. Like, wow, talk about an entrance for Zion. Oh, no one's going to remember that because Kawhi and Paul George at 2 a.m. Eastern.
That's the one to me that like I remember waking up the next day and being like, what happened? That to me, the three biggest are the ones you just talked about. Durant one, the Paul George and Kawhi, and then Luka is on like now on the other bookend. Like if the Durant signing is the one bookend, the Luka is the other. The perfect middle way point for that is Kawhi and Paul George, which, obviously we'll now remember as the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, really.
Jalen Williams trade.
It's ridiculous. And I do think that there's something to what you were saying about the buyouts. Like doing business or running a sports team has always been something that's involved opportunity cost. That's just always something people have had to weigh is, sure, I can do this thing and this will happen, but what could I do with that time or money or player or pick instead? Now it's like, instead of weighing, I don't know, stretching someone's buyout over 3 years, you're like, do I buy out Damian Lillard, who was my superstar trade? Like we drafted one and we traded for another. And now I'm going to like, not even amnesty. Like I'm going to pay to... It's
$22 million a year, paying $22 million a year to not have one of the 75 best players of all time on my team. Like, I know he has the torn Achilles. It just, if you had told me 2 years ago when that trade happened that this is how it was going to end, I would have not
be like, he like hung out with Aaron Rodgers for an offseason and is now like full-time Dame Dollar, like rap career, like something went like not even wrong. Like the world, just something happened that was irreversible. That just the guy's not going to be an asset to your team. Nope.
Yeah, we got COVID too between now and then.
If the Heat get Dame, can I just say the irony if the Heat sign him?
Well, I don't know if you realize this, but a few things happened with that trade that happened today with the John Collins trade, where John Collins goes to the Clippers, Norm Powell goes to the Heat. So there are a few wrinkles in there. One, the Clippers moved off of Norm Powell, which makes them more likely to sign Bradley Beal, in my opinion.
Yes.
He's already been kind of linked to them anyway. They want to do a short-term thing. I'm sure he wouldn't be opposed to living in LA and playing with James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. And then another wrinkle in that is that the Heat also opened up a roster spot. So could they be chasing one of Dame or Beal is a possibility there. Although they just got Norm Powell, so maybe the Beal thing doesn't make quite as much sense. They're both two guards who get buckets. Tyler Hero is one of your two best players already. Do you really want to, push that? It was already a little bit redundant to begin with. And then the third thing being the Jazz just opened up some cap space to either take on bad money or maybe chase someone in restricted free agency.
I was going to say
Quentin Grimes with the, we both have a very familiar relationship with him, and his whole goal has been to get this bag. And now we're kind of at the goal line with that. He's forced multiple trades in the NBA to get more opportunities, and the market kind of screwed him this year. It feels like he's on the wrong side of the restricted free agency market to get the money that he thought he was going to get. But we'll see what happens here. The Jazz reporters seem to think that they're just doing it so that they can have more space to take on bad contracts and do what the Nets did, basically.
Yeah.
But maybe at the trade deadline, kind of similar to what the Washington Wizards did with the Marcus Smart trade.
I can see that happening because we heard some rumblings of like the Jazz ownership is done losing like this, and they kind of want the front office to finally start winning. And I know the sentiment
they're so far away. Like I don't
sentiment from national media has been like, well, the Jazz front office is really good because they're bad, but on purpose, and they can be good whenever they want. Like, and
smart.
It's like, oh yeah, let's all hold hands. And like, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean? They can be good whenever they want. Like,
they blew up a 55-win team, 60-win team, and since they have only been bad, missed on all their draft picks, hit a home run with getting Lowry marketed in that trade, and then instead of selling him at his highest trade value, they decided to give him basically a max contract. Like
they drafted Keontae George and Bryce Sensabaugh and Isaiah Collier, and then kept Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton on the roster on purpose, and then after that traded Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton for Yusuf Nurkic. Minus a second-round pick.
Give up a second-round pick off of Colin Sexton, who's a better player than Yusuf Nurkic at this point.
Yeah, get off of Colin Sexton is ridiculous phrasing, too. Like, I've been on this train that, like, the 95th percentile offensive EPM he had last season and the 87th percentile one he had this season is not, like, some, like, woke analytic nonsense. Like, it's, like, actually just the guy's an impactful offensive player.
Yeah. No,
so he's just...
Any season, like the thing about Sexton is that he actually, his year before he left Cleveland, the one before the injury, was pretty promising. And then the injury derailed him for a year or two.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of got back on track. Like, he's a good third guard to have. And in the right context, you might be able to start him if you can cover up for some of the defensive warts that he has.
I just don't. Yeah, I don't know. They're making interesting business this offseason, the Jazz, man.
Well, they won the draft, so that's all you have to worry about, They won the draft for the third time in 4 years, and they have no proven NBA players that they've drafted. So
I love Keontae and I love Bryce, and it's like, what are they supposed to be doing with Jordan and Colin and Laurie and
I liked Bryce and Keontae at the time of the draft, and like Bryce, I feel like Bryce is more just injury related, that he hasn't really done anything. But like, have they drafted a single player you can guarantee me is a starter in the NBA? Because they didn't draft Walker Kessler.
Yeah, guarantee no, but it's funny because in this new wave of guys who can do nothing are actually better than guys who do things but not that efficiently. Kyle Filipowski might be like the most.
I like Filipowski.
Yeah, you should.
I had him in my lottery in that draft, and I know that there was that weird off the court story that was not his fault by any means that caused him to fall in the draft. But
also like interviews apparently were just
That's kind of Rasheer Fleming had a similar thing I heard in this draft cycle.
Yes.
Both of those guys were top 20 talents. Like if you're just drafting based on talent, like Like Filipowski will have a 10-year NBA career, no doubt. He's probably, if the defense can get a little bit better, he's probably their best chance of having a starter. Unless, I mean, I'm not a big Ace Bailey guy, but I'm sure he'll figure it out to an extent. But I don't know. I just feel like they get a pass all the time from the media, like you said, and it's kind of unexplainable to me.
It's like, oh, they can just start winning whenever they want. It's like, okay, when is that going to be? Like, never? Like, is that like, I don't know.
My going into year 4 of a rebuild. Like, like this, once again, I know I'm coming from the process standpoint of like, we hard tanked for 2 to 3 years, like really just went into the shitter. And then we started to turn it around in that like 4th or 5th year. And then when Joel finally got healthy in that 5th year, we were like a legit playoff team, but they don't have a Joel Embiid is my point. It's like, at least you could have always said, if that guy can get healthy, we'll be a good team. Like the Sixers had many shots, many bites at the apple,
yes,
but also had multiple guys in waiting that with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid to make them into a legit playoff team. Like, what do the Jazz have? Like if you're a big Ace Bailey guy, then that's what you would say. But like, I still need to see it in the NBA. So,
and I don't know that the rest of their roster is necessarily conducive for his success.
Not right now. No. Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I actually love someone's point that they brought up to me, Ace Bailey was basically the best player they could have drafted if your goal is to tank next year, because we know he's going to have a lot of warts early in his career. Like if you drafted Khan or Trey or traded up for VJ or whatever, those guys would all help you in the interim, probably more than Ace will.
Yeah.
So if that's your bet to make, is like we would rather get a top 4 pick in next draft and take Ace and take a long-term bet on Ace, then sure, Ace, you can sell me on
basically
that.
To replace Laurie, I guess.
That's the thought. Yeah. Right.
So yeah. Anyway, man, now that we've sifted through the slop of today and Kevin Love tweeting about how he's now just a number, you know,
sad.
I want to get into the Philadelphia 76ers, which is the alleged reason I brought you on the show. Just one of the more interesting rosters in the NBA every offseason to me, and we've discussed this a little bit, but like Joel Embiid being the human question mark that he is as an NBA superstar is pretty much just what this team has been for however many years now. It almost feels like once Simmons was gone, like the scapegoat was done with, and it became very raw and about, is what we have enough? And it just wasn't. And I want to say now, going into this next season, that like looking up and down this roster, there's a real mix of now and later. It's a legitimate balance. And I don't know that it's a good one. I don't know that it'll be good for a team over the course of a season. Like, I don't know these things, right? I think a little bit of Dave Gettleman, 2 timelines. Rebuilding and competing at the same time, but contending was never part of that plan. Just rebuilding and competing, man. Just building in Lincoln with my guys. Like there was no actual, but with the Sixers, I feel a little bit like there's 2 teams. There's Embiid and Paul George and Maxey, and then there's Maxey and McCain and VJ.
Sure.
And Maxey being in both of those is very interesting because it makes each one as feasible as the other. Like, I think it's as feasible that the Sixers trade McCain in the next 2 years than it is that they trade Maxey or Embiid, or you know what I mean? Like, sure. I think if it goes one way, it's going to go that way. And if it goes the other, it's going to go that way. Is there a preference you have? Like, do you just want them to tear it down and just rock with these kids? Or do you think that like the NBA is just 30 teams trying to get as close as they can and we're all just on a floating rock and you have some talented players? And
I think the league has changed a lot in the last few years. I think that's the way to put it, is like,
there you go.
If I had told you 2 years ago or a year ago that the Indiana Pacers would have taken the Oklahoma City Thunder to Game 7 of the NBA Finals, would you have believed me? Like that's the way I want to put it. Like I do think that I think the parody era stuff is real. And I think that you want to try to get as many chances as you possibly can thing is also part of it. And the main reason why the Sixers have not been able to get to the conference finals or the finals or get over the top has been either a lack of consistency from their best players or a lack of availability from their best players. And the way that I look at this roster right now is, like you said, it is. I've literally made the joke before. It's like if the Warriors did the 2 timelines thing, except the second timeline might go well, and the first timeline ended up losing in the second round instead of winning 4 championships. That is basically the parallel that we have, where like they have a nice pivot point in case things don't go well. But I'm using this upcoming year as a test case year. Has been my whole thing ever since we knew we were going to get the draft pick. Ever since, Joel and Paul George got hurt and Maxey had this weird season where he was kind of trying to drag the team that was, playing with some of the worst rotation players in the NBA. And McCain, had his little run. My whole thing is that I want to use this next year to kind of take the temperature of what the team looks like. Can Joel Embiid play 50 games? Because my whole thing has been like, I think he's basically at the Kawhi Leonard stage of his career, where if you get the 50 games of like decent play out of him, and he can play like in this year, probably Kawhi could have probably played into the second or third round of the playoffs.
Definitely. Did you see the reporting that he did? Like, he's so insane that he, like, even though his team was out of the playoffs, he kept going and conditioning into June as if he had made it into the finals.
So that's what I kind of look at, but there's also that like 20 to 30% chance that Joel Embiid is just done. Like, it's like there's a chance that like we never see him play more than 20 games again in a season, and it's early career, mid-career Greg Oden or Brandon Roy or whatever you want to, whatever Blazers player insert here, Bill Walton. But they've had a really rough history.
I know, but putting it's just the 3 like name brand examples all being from the same.
At least they were all good players. Sam Bowie wasn't even a good like that's the funny thing about the Blazers history is like we always think about them because they were like iconic either prospects or players. And then the Sam Bowie one just never got off the ground. He was just kind of whatever. But the Joel thing is really like the centerpiece of all of this.
Yeah.
If Joel can come back and play 50 to 60 games next year, and you have a stretch for a month where he looks like MVP Joel and he makes, the All-Star team, and, he's not quite a top 5 or 6 player, but he's maybe a top 15 player. And then Maxey continues to take steps with his development in this upcoming year, playing with a little bit more of a normal team. VJ can have an impact at the gate. McCain gets back to his normal self, and Paul George can at least be playable. One of the reasons why Paul George was terrible last year was because we tried to play him as our point guard.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't have any sort of creation outside of Maxey and PG. So it turned into a lot of overextending for Paul George and Maxey in roles that they're not really fit for. But ultimately, if you're on a max contract and you're one of the best players on the team, the microscope's going to be on you, whether Joel Embiid is healthy or not. And so long story short on this, I mean, in my ideal world, they can marry the two and they can figure out a way to upgrade. Let's just say in my ideal world, Joel plays 60 games this year. He makes the All-Star team. Paul George looks not quite like Paul George from 2 years ago, but maybe somewhere.
But like a legit NBA starting wing. A starting wing. Yeah. That has weight nowadays still.
Maxey gets back on track. VJ gives us positive minutes. McCain continues to grow. And then at the deadline, they could move Drummond, Kelly Oubre, and salary for and a pick for PJ Washington or something. I'm just riffing because he's an expiring contract. He's a power forward. It makes sense in my head. Whatever. That is, and I'll bring Grimes back at a decent clip too. I don't really care as much about him. He's more just like, they kind of need his salary and they need him to start in the interim until VJ is ready to go, I think. That's like the ideal, like we trade for like Santi Aldama or PJ Washington or someone like that at the deadline. And then we could give this thing a try. And then if it doesn't work, then we can always have the second timeline to fall back on. And you said trade Joel, and I've been trying to tell people for a year, Joel Embiid and Paul George are virtually untradeable with this new CBA. Yeah. I think it's becoming evident this offseason what I've been saying for a year, because I don't think people needed to see the examples of how impossible it is to move these big contracts.
And like the Sexton market and everything else like we've talked about, just to circle back on those points, like those things being those contracts, those pieces of paper having the kind of like curve down on the valuation scale that they do is not any sort of indictment on the talent of those players, but it's instead like a harsh reminder that this is ultimately a supply and demand marketplace. And like
Norm Powell
points per game are in higher supply than ever.
Norm Powell just had the best year of his career and just got traded for Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson in a second-round pick. That's what Miami gave up to get him because of the financial circumstances of it all. So that's what I've been trying to tell people is like, whether you like Joel Embiid or not, he will be a Philadelphia 76er for the rest of his career unless maybe he gets bought out in a few years and then he signs with someone else. That contract is unmovable. It is literally, he's making $70 million on the last year of his deal. Like, there's no way they can trade Joel. I think the likely options are they either ride it out for the rest of Joel's contract, a few years from now they come to some sort of buyout, or he has to medically retire. Those are like the three avenues that they can explore, not this year, but down the line. And I've been trying to tell people like it's ride or die with Joel at this point, and they'll probably wait out the Paul George contract because of that too. And I think it's likely that they're trying to build around Maxey and VJ is my guess. I love Jared McCain.
Oh,
let me say something. I have a fear because Tyrese Maxey's been my guy since before the draft.
I heard the tone in that.
Well, here's the thing. Because I want to put it in a proper context, because Maxey's been my guy since before the draft. I absolutely loved him. I couldn't believe he fell to us during the draft.
I was like 19 and I had him number 7 that year.
I was like, this guy's like a top 10 talent. Like, it makes no sense he's fallen. He's unbelievable speed, great touch, like just an amazing player. And then all you ever heard about is how great he was as a guy and blah, blah, blah. He falls to us. Everything works out about as perfectly as I could ever imagine. We trade for James Harden. Maxey becomes an all-star. And then Joel Embiid's body explodes, of course, and that kind of derails things a little bit. But long story short on this, I have a fear that they might be making a similar mistake to what the Kings did with De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton. Now, McCain has been so good for such a short period of time that's why I think you need to use this next year as a test case to see who's better at building around long term. Because if Maxey comes back and then he takes a leap and he makes the all NBA next year, okay, whatever. This conversation is like irrelevant, because very obviously if Maxey's making all NBA, then he's probably going to end up better than Jared McCain ever will be. If he comes back and has another similar year to last year where he's kind of like good but not great and like struggles due to the context and isn't really taking steps in his development, then I think you need to look at how Jared McCain's playing and saying, should we just go long-term with VJ and McCain and try to trade Maxey or figure out a way to get Maxey to a team where he kind of similar to what they just did with the Desmond Bane trade, where you're reloading and trying to like have a longer-term outlook. If Maxey is not, Maxey's a great player. He's not a 1A guy that will drag a team to competency. Like, he is very much one of the best second options in the NBA, but because of the lack of playmaking and because of the lack of like pull-up self-creation that you usually get from those 1A guards, he's not someone who's going to be, unless he continues to grow in those departments, he's probably not going to reach like Damian Lillard heights. He's probably going to be more like, and I say this not as a, not as a one-for-one comparison because they're very different players, but he'll probably be closer to like, maybe not quite as good as this player, but like Kyrie Irving was playing off
that's the name that was going to come to my mind.
Yeah.
I think if you think of the quintessential
second
number
option.
2,
yeah,
like And you know, Schwinn from the Strickland and I have talked about how Devin Booker is almost kind of
Sure.
presenting himself as in this mold as well. Someone who I love and whose game I adore, but just may not have shown what it takes for me to look at him and be like, oh, that's a guy where no matter what your roster looks like, you're one of the 8 best teams in the league if he's your number 1 and blah, blah, blah. Like,
I do just want to cut you off a little bit there. I feel like Maxey last year and Booker the last 2 years are probably extreme examples of teams fucking up the build, like how they build around those guys.
Yes.
Like Maxey was playing big minutes with Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond, Kelly Oubre,
Martin,
Caleb Martin, who was having a terrible season before we traded him, Kelly Oubre. Now, look, once again, there are probably only 8 or 9 guys in the NBA that, like you said, like that can like work with whatever as floor raisers. You guys have one of them in Jalen Brunson right now, but you guys have done a really good job building around Jalen Brunson in a way that I feel like the Suns specifically were like, if you said who would you want as the second option or the third option with Devin Booker, you wouldn't say 35-year-old Kevin Durant plus no defensive infrastructure, plus no athletic wings, plus no good bigs, plus, oh, by the way, our third best player is just a much worse version of Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. So, like, the way that those two teams have specifically built around them exposes their weaknesses more, coupled with the fact that they're probably not 1A guys. They're probably more like 1B where everything needs to be right around them, or 2A, best second options in the league. And Booker is a pretty incredible player. And I think that if the Suns had not fumbled that situation badly, they probably he could probably still look like a top 10 player in the NBA, but they have not done him any favors. But yeah, in general, yes.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. To me, it's like, I guess I picture the concept of maximizing the rest of Joel Embiid's career as like this black hole hovering over the Sixers organization. And it's like, how much stuff are you going to feed to that black hole until you just realize, like, this is continuing to feed it is not going to stop. They're
not. The answer is that that's what I've been trying to tell Sixers fans is like, the scenario I laid out is probably the best case scenario where they might give up one future protected pick to get like an expiring power forward like PJ Washington or something along those lines. They're not going to be trading those Clippers picks they have. They're not going to be trading their own picks unprotected. They're not going to be trading Jared McCain in the next year. They're not going to mess up their future to win temporarily. They're going to say, this guy has gotten us so far. We're going to try the best that we possibly can. Maybe we can take advantage of a desperate team that wants to move off of someone that they don't want to pay. And we could take it kind of similar to what the Grimes thing was. Like those are the kind of moves I think they're willing to do.
Yeah.
Where they're like, we'll take on a little bit of financial burden to pay Quentin Grimes and like go into the second apron potentially. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to go, okay, it's 2021 again, and we're loading up and we're sending out first and young players and whatever we can get back to win this year. They're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Like I think they're past the point of that. I think, like I said, this next year will be a test year. I think the best case scenario is that they get to the deadline and they make like a minor improvement,
a little buy.
Trade.
Yeah.
Little buy. Yeah, exactly. A little, they push in the chips a little bit.
Something to like not put them ahead of other teams, but to just keep up with the rising tide of
puncher's chance.
Yeah. Contenders are adding stuff, so we have to technically add something too. Yeah.
Honestly, like the worst version of that trade in my mind is like they trade like for like Grant Williams or something. You know what I mean? Where it's like not a good player, but like a fine, like, all right, we need a power forward and like he can kind of do some power forward things, even though we would prefer to not trade for a player who makes as much money as him. But like, look, we can trade his contract in a year when this doesn't work. When he annoys the shit out of everyone in the locker room, we can always trade him for whoever else. I don't. Once again, I think the biggest swing they would take would be on like a PJ Washington, Santi Aldama level player. I don't think that they're going to be like, if there's a star that becomes available or like a high level role player that becomes available in the next year, I don't imagine the Sixers are in those conversations, because I think that they love that all they've been doing is drafting character guys, and they want to like reset their culture.
Sure, it does seem that. I was gonna say, like, is there a Paul George for Michael Porter Jr.?
I've thought about this before, actually, which is perverted, but
yes, it is.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I think if you have a season where Paul George is just like, it's obvious it's over for him, like it's like, man, it's not looking good. I think what you could see is something like a year from now, the Nets. So the Nets own the Sixers draft pick 2 years from now, and then it's like protected top 8 or 10 or whatever for a few years. You could see like a Paul George for Michael Porter Jr. trade, and the Sixers just loosen those protections on that pick. So like the Nets are like, all right, make this pick top 4 protected instead of top 8 protected, because we just saw what you can do if you want to keep your pick. Like, if the Sixers want to keep their pick, they'll just be like, all right, let's just go into the tank. And then the Nets walk away with no picks from the James Harden trade that they originally made with the Sixers, except for, I think, the pick that they used on Dariq Whitehead, if I remember correctly. That was and that did not end up working out for them. It was either Dariq Whitehead or Noah Clowney. Hopefully it's Noah Clowney, because he's at least got a little bit more upside. Dariq Whitehead, it's unfortunate. I think the injuries have just kind of derailed any sort of NBA career for him. But just real quick on this, since you're giving me a little bit of a platform here, I want to dispel a narrative about, because you wanted to talk about Maxey a little bit and like how good he actually is, and I think we laid some of that out. But this is something my buddy Mike Chiodo posted, which is that during this season, Maxey was terrible to start the season, and the whole team, once again, this was when we were playing. Joel didn't start the season. Paul George was out to start the season. Jared McCain wasn't even in the lineup yet. It was basically Tyrese Maxey and some of the worst players in the NBA in the lineup. Once the team got a little bit more normal, Jared entered the rotation. Joel played some games. Paul George played some games. And then Maxey had an injury at the end of the year. I don't know if you know this, but Maxey had an injury where he literally couldn't dribble with one hand because he messed up his thumb, but he still tried to play 10 games with it. And we were all like, why are that's why when it's very funny when people are like, oh, they egregiously tanked. I'm like, no, our roster, half of our roster was genuinely dead. Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like they weren't obviously tanking towards the end of the year, but everyone's body fell apart in like February. And we were
I knew that about Maxey. I forget how many, was it like 23 games or something before how many games went by before all 3 of Maxey, PG, and Embiid played?
It probably was at least 15 to 20.
I was going to say, I think it was 23 games.
We started the season like 2-13. We were terrible. Yes. It was awful. But anyway, if you take out that really bad start, and you take out Maxey when he was genuinely injured, and we were all like, why are they letting him tank his stats? And literally just losing himself money out there. Yeah, I was like, this is insane. So in the 37 games in between that, so almost a full half a season, Maxey averaged 29 points, 6.7 assists, 3.5 rebounds, and he had a 59 true shooting. And by the way, if you take out the Andre Drummond minutes this season.
All right. Now we're getting into.
No, hold on. Because Drummond only played like 500. I want to say 500 minutes this season with Maxey. We were the worst team in the NBA whenever Andre Drummond was on the court by like a wide margin. If you take away and you just put Yabu at the 5, who you guys just got, or you put Bona at the 5, or you put whoever at the 5.
I love Bona.
We had an above average offense. Like, our defense was still bad, but I was like, okay, so like that gives me hope that like, as long as you don't put the worst players in the NBA around Tyrese Maxey, you can have an average to above average offense, if not even better if they give him better players. And then you just got to figure out how to clean up the defense, which I do think he was a little bit better on defense this year. I think that's probably the area where he's made the most strides. The area where he hasn't made the most strides is playmaking. That's something I think he needs to work on a lot.
They were net rating farming.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But long story short on this, Maxey had a terrible start and a terrible end. And in the middle, if he had had Joel Embiid or whoever around, and he had a season that looked like that, that's like a third team all NBA season.
Yeah.
So I kind of look at it like I kind of look at it like Maxey did the best considering the circumstances, and hopefully we'll get back on track next year. I mean, this is a little bit of a propaganda hour.
No, I
completely aside, but yeah.
But no, I think I completely like that resonates with me, because especially like you can't talk about the headlines about this guy's missing this many games and this and this and that, and then like not also account for the instability of the on-court environment when talking about some of these guys play. The thing for me is just, I guess the way to put it, and it's almost like depressing, but like the same way that like Ben Solak wrote, I think he was still with the Ringer, and he was like, Josh Allen's incredible, the city of Buffalo is amazing, and it's just never mattered because he's not Patrick Mahomes. I feel a little bit like every year with the Sixers, it's like, well, if you just, and if you put, and you filter, and it's like, well, they're going to continue to have those things.
Yeah.
It's like
NBA what if team.
Yeah.
Ripping off the shirt.
Hanging out next to a radioactive plant being like, well, you know, this could be a really great spot to set up a daycare if everything
just cleaned it up.
Everything just stays the way it is and is fine. I guess my final question on the Sixers future and everything is, if you could just delete the last 10 years of franchise history, like if you could just go back to during the process and run it back, would you, or do you feel like this is how it was going to go no matter what? Like the process at some point was going to get hijacked by the league and by the ownership and like, would you try it again? Or do you think that it was always destined to just end with like perennial disappointment?
Well, I wouldn't, because I personally benefited from it. I was working a job I hated 10 years ago. I was then able to use this to build a platform, but my professional career aside, my own personal success aside,
I was able to capitalize off of the suffering and
exactly
of the hundreds of thousands of Philadelphians.
Exactly. That's why we have a right-wing Patreon tier. No, but that's a joke, by the way. But no, the way that I look at it is I look at it like this. Basically, our fortunes are the same exact as they were before the process, and not every rebuilding strategy is going to work. There isn't a pill that there's a one, solved everything rebuilding strategy. There are always going to be inherent risks. There are always going to be downsides. And I think probably, I don't know, it's hard for me with the Hinkie thing, because like, I don't know if Hinkie would have guided the ship in the right direction. But I do think that ultimately what the Sixers had during this run was they had, I think, in my opinion, two teams that could have won the championship.
Butler, Simmons, Redick.
Butler, Simmons. And even that, I've talked about it a little bit on the podcast. It's a little bit of hindsight bias because the vibes were horrific on that team.
Everyone wanted the other guy. Everyone wanted the guy, whoever had the locker to their left, they wanted them dead. And it was like
everyone hated each other on that team.
How can you win like that?
That's why the
2K roster. That's an all-time 2K roster.
Yes, and that's why the Jimmy Butler stuff drives me insane, because like when he was here, the vibes were not good.
It's all bad faith discourse.
And everyone just retells it. I mean, every fan base has their own version of this, where there's like one guy who is uber talented and should have worked, and then it doesn't work out, and then you reminisce over those years. And the Sixers have had a bunch, obviously, with Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler and whatever. But long story short, I'll put it like this. They had two championships, the 2019 team that obviously could have potentially won a championship, and then the 2023 team, which potentially could have won a championship, with Harden, Joel, and Maxey coming into his own. Ultimately, that's kind of all you can ask for as a fan base. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you get incredibly lucky, and you either get the health luck or you make a massive trade, and you can... That's why when we talk about how the NBA has changed, you used to have LeBron James or Steph Curry. And now it's like, hey, man, if we have Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns and defensive infrastructure around these guys and the right coach, like we might win the championship. And that was sort of unthinkable 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago before the process, the reason why they did the process was to get a Joel Embiid level player. when you needed a Joel Embiid level player, probably even better than Joel Embiid, to be completely honest with you, to win a championship. And now it feels like depth and versatility and having, not a top 3 player like you used to have to win a championship or multiple championships, but like a top 12 player and a bunch of really good infrastructure and you have a real chance every year. I think that ultimately that's probably the miscalculation from the Sixers during this whole thing, is that they were always trying to chase the next big thing instead of just focusing on like what the Celtics did, which was like, all right, we have our core pieces in place. Let's build around these guys. What the Knicks are doing now, what the Pacers did. We're like, you have your core pieces in place and then you're just putting ancillary talent around them. And ultimately the Sixers tried to do Joel with 3 or 4 different co-stars. It never lasted more than 2 years when all of those guys were healthy and normal. And it was Ben, then it was Jimmy and Ben. That didn't last very long. Then it was Ben and he started to fall apart. And then it was Harden for 2 years. Then it was Maxey. And now Joel fell apart. So ultimately, the only thing that I think that I regret through this whole thing is the constant roster turnover after the process. Because if you have a team that's good enough, if you have enough assets to trade for Jimmy Butler, James Harden, say what you will about Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris was having a great season that year. If you have the assets to also draft all the guys that they've drafted over these last few years, and you still can't win a championship, maybe it is karma. Maybe it is, just some universal bad luck. Maybe Joel Embiid was never just going to be able to stay healthy or be good enough to be the 1A on a championship team. But I think that ultimately what worked about the process was they had enough talent to build multiple contending rosters over the course of a handful of years. They just got impatient, and the turnover in the front office and the turnover on the roster was ultimately what came back to bite them.
I want to like freeze frame when you said it was Jimmy and Ben, right? Yeah. Because the reporting, like in the books, I mean, like Weitzman and Fisher pretty much are is that like the organization wanted Ben handling the ball. And so that was why Jimmy was like
the old front office. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that an example of like trying to balance youth or trying to balance youth and competition and like messing up and picking youth, like, cause what if they had traded Ben right then to a team like the Charlotte Hornets or Orlando Magic that did not have anything going for them at that time besides like one dude, Vooch and Kemba, right? And what if they were like, hey, we'll take that guy,
sure,
Vooch or Kemba, for Ben Simmons, and you give us picks. I don't know how it would have worked. I'm making shit up, right? But
no, there's plenty of examples where like
you get my point now, where it's like now are they going to? I mean, obviously PG and Embiid are so much older than Embiid was then, but like I think now going with VJ and McCain and Maxey is your move, and you just figure it out later, even though they're all guards nominally. But maybe now do they feel like spurned by that? Will they try and go the other way and be like, oh no, we got to take McCain and Paul George and flip that for LeBron? I don't know. Like,
so I think that they have learned from the mistake of, that's why I like what they did this offseason, to be honest with you. I think if this were the old Sixers, they would be making panic moves. And I think they would be like, we have to figure this out. We have to get it back on track. We don't want to lose our jobs. And instead they were like, why don't we? And this was my whole argument throughout the draft cycle was, you can draft Ace Bailey for positional fit if you're stupid. And you can go, well, this guy makes the most sense on our roster right now. When you look at how the NBA functions, if you think VJ Edgecombe is a better prospect than Ace Bailey, draft VJ Edgecombe. I don't care that he doesn't fit with the current team. You can always figure that out later. Now, once again, I don't want a ton of roster turnover. I don't want guys in and out all the time. But ultimately, you have one shot potentially at nailing a top 3 pick. And you can't take a guy because you need a power forward or a small forward because you think that fits better if you think that he's a tier below this guy as a prospect. And I think about those what ifs all the time. There are so many what ifs. Like, what if they just traded Ben Simmons the first time for James Harden when James Harden was still James Harden? What if, they went with Jimmy instead of Ben? What if there's so many revolving like doors and things that could have happened that I always think about. But ultimately, once again, would we have ever gotten 2 straight months of Joel Embiid healthy in the playoffs? And if your answer is no, then none of this matters. Because it
might just be that simple.
Even with Jimmy, Jimmy had Bam in Miami, and the greatest coach we've ever seen, maybe in Eric Spoelstra. Like, even with the guys that were able to drag their teams to the finals or make conference finals runs, like, they had relatively decent health. And I know it drives Sixers fans insane, and I know the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast constantly talks about this, but the best ability being availability is probably more true now than it ever has been, just because it's impossible not to have. We just saw Tyrese Halliburton, Damian Lillard, and Jason Tatum, who, by the way, was an Iron Man, tear their Achilles in one playoff run. Like, it is more important now than ever to have available players, especially your best players, deeper rosters, more versatility. And that's the hope that I have, is that, like, if they ever get the chance with Joel to win, or if they don't, whatever, like, I just hope that they learn their lessons from before and stop chasing, like, the big. Don't be like the Lakers. Like, look, the DeAndre signing was fine because they got him for nothing, but, like, I don't know. Like, would the Lakers be better with Luke Cornett? I think they would. like I think that the smarter teams don't chase the big names. Like, they chase ancillary talent that makes more sense for their roster.
The Knicks going to give Gershon Yabusele
that pickup for you guys.
Not even the full TMLE. He took less than it so that they can go sign more veterans.
Sure.
Like, that was, like, the priority for them this offseason, seemingly. Clarkson, the reporting from like Knicks beat veterans like Steve Popper was that he was pretty much like a nice unexpected find. Which is cool. Go ahead, sign those guys for minimums.
I'll be honest, I'd rather have Campaign than Jordan Clarkson, but that's just a personal take for me. You also might bring back Campaign, and then that won't be.
I get it. I think Clarkson is, like, better enough where it matters to just you put Clarkson on the roster and figure the rest out.
I think Clarkson stinks, but that's just a personal opinion.
Yeah. He also had, well, I forget what the number is. He had like a 92nd percentile usage last season in Utah. Like, he averaged, like, he was
overextended, but zoom out. Jordan Clarkson's had like 2 or 3 good years in his entire career.
Oh yeah.
And once again, veterans minimum signing, it doesn't matter. Ultimately.
So that's the thing, is at the Campaign cap allotment to get someone to get someone who can maybe, like, play off the bench every day. That's already more valuable than Campaign, who, like, was
Campaign is the old. He's a roulette player. Like, he is.
Yes.
He's an ultimate swings your fortune. He's not someone you can rely upon. And once again, the reason why I think teams should be trying to build deeper teams is because the regular season is harder than ever to survive. You need youth. You need athleticism. This is something Maury's talked about. This is something a lot of teams have talked about. Like, just getting to the playoffs is hard. Once you get there, who's playable, you figure out. Like, I mean, Campaign for both of our teams had one game that he probably won for us in the playoffs. And I do think that having those guys on the roster is valuable. You're spinning the roulette wheel, but we just saw the Pacers literally get to the 7th game of the NBA Finals with, like, half their team being roulette wheel players.
I was going to say, like, Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley, like, Bryant's
even Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell.
He's a great example. TJ feels a little more like running the rock to me than a 20-yard deep ball. But
now for sure, absolutely. But, like, Obi Mathurin's the ultimate roulette wheel player, where he literally won them a finals game and lost them 2 finals games.
He tanks you with his shot, with his field goal attempts and his defense.
Yeah,
but if they go in, though, it's the ultimate. Like, But if I do double or nothing and put the house on this, we could get a second house. And it's like, or you could be homeless. Like,
Utah Jazz fans get excited for the Ace Bailey experience.
Yeah, man. That is going to be a streaky rookie. That is going to be a guy.
It's going to be a movie.
Rookie of the month, like, in November, after genuinely, like, domestic terrorism level October and December months. Like, I just. It's gonna be a process, and they're gonna have to ride with that. Trill, man, I know the summer league's coming up. I'm I'll be out there for the first time. So I'll be out
go.
there in Vegas. I've never been out there. I've been out to Vegas once for the Super Bowl, but never for anything NBA related. So
that's awesome.
This is very exciting for me. What is the one random summer league Sixer that that roster came out and you're like, this guy should suck, so he's going to be like our second best player? I saw the Knicks have a guy named Luka Skuka on their summer league roster.
I like that one.
Without even knowing what position he plays, that guy can navigate the hell out of the short roll in a pick. Without even knowing what Luka Skuka looks like, that guy knows how to make an entry pass into the post. Like that guy,
good connective passer.
He's a 6'10" Slovenian big, so we'd
love to see it.
Yeah, go for it.
So we have a few summer league legends on our team this year. Keve Aluma was a guy for us last year who was 25. I think he's 26 now. 25 in summer league last year, and I'm not even joking when I say I was like, first off, I've never heard of this guy before, and he looks like an NBA player.
I was going to say, he's the best player alive.
I was like this, but he plays abroad still because he's not quite. He's one of those good. He could be good in the G League, but also, he probably struggled with NBA size and athleticism.
Rokas Jokubaitis is a guy on the Knicks roster.
Sure, yeah, I've heard his name before. Yeah, honestly, the obvious ones are like VJ crushed in his first game. I'm interested to see what. I know that Jalen Hood-Schifino is going to continue to ruin my life because I made a joke about him pre-draft where I said I would not draft this guy in the first round, and his uncle found it and was basically very mad at me, and I was like, oh no, now I'm cursed to watch Jalen Hood-Schifino play for the Sixers for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And then, but the guy that I'm really interested to see, are you a Syracuse guy? I can't remember.
I'm not, but I'm New York basketball. Sure. Is New York basketball. Right. So.
Judah Mintz is.
Oh yeah. I forgot you drafted him like 40th or something.
He was an undrafted free agent for us, and then.
Oh no, Bono was at 39 or 40.
Yes,
and Mintz was UDFA. I'm just dumb. Sorry, go on.
No, Mintz was a UDFA guy for us, and then he spent a year in the G League. The thing about Mintz is that he cannot shoot at all, but he is like he's kind of a hooper, but like he's very good at like. He's the best traditional point guard we have on the team.
I was gonna say he's like the Chris Dunn of Shane Larkins.
Yes, little bit of a bucket, but also can pass a little, can defend a little. So I'll be interested to see. I would hope that they play him with VJ a lot, just because VJ is not like a primary ball handler, but he's a good secondary ball handler.
You can kind of just like mush those two together. Like
exactly,
go be a primary between the two of you. Like
exactly. I'm hoping.
I saw Mintz play in college against one Carlton Carrington and Pitt.
Oh, we love Bub in this house, but no. Long story short, I don't know if Mintz is an NBA player, but he's going to be a summer league legend. My goat in summer league personally is Cole Swider, who comes out every year. I know that he has cement feet and he can't move on the perimeter at all. I think there's a George Niang, Davis Bertans role for him in the NBA where he could just play like 15 minutes a game, hit open shots, rebound, move the ball. I think that Cole Swider is a guy that should get like a real chance in the NBA, maybe on a bad team.
He's such like a Grizzly. Like he's
exactly. They got Cole Swider, of course, just like Jay Huff last year.
Oh man, I loved Huff last preseason. I was running the Huff propaganda. I was like, he does reverse dunks. This is cool, guys.
New Miles Turner just dropped. The Pacers got him. So
yeah, no, I unironically made that reference in a tweet when they traded for him. I was like, well, you got to move on somehow.
He can shoot threes. He can get downhill. He can protect the rim, and he's a horrible rebounder.
We're here.
My friend Will pointed that out, and I was like, that's perfect.
Close enough. Welcome back. It's like you never left, Miles Turner.
Exactly.
I will say one summer league legend that I'll recommend that people look out for is Damian Bowe.
Oh, yeah. I've heard the name.
Mr. Triple-Double. Just like he was on the Knicks summer league roster last year and then on the Westchester Knicks. He was on the South Bay Lakers the year before. His mom, very active on Twitter, name searcher, liked all my tweets last summer about him. That David, said,
my favorite, other than Pod's dad, who's my guy, who because I hyped up Pods pre-draft, and we were DMing during the cycle because he talked to everyone in the NBA Twitter sphere. David Roddy's mom is another one of my favorites. Who I love, Big Body Roddy, very much a meme player, but near and dear to my heart.
I think like you spoke about Grant Williams earlier. Like I talk about how like copycat off seasons are always like an epidemic. Like everyone looks at the team that won and they're like, okay, so if we just do everything like that, I feel like Grant Williams existing is like David Roddy and some other guys. Like they like this wasn't here before us. We made this. You know?
It's my favorite example of this in the draft ever. And I remember saying this in the 2021 draft. I was like, is James Bouknight only getting drafted in the lottery because Zach LaVine just broke out and they're both like light-skinned athletic dudes who can get buckets? And that's exactly what happened. Like, he literally should not have been drafted in the lottery, but got drafted in the lottery because of the compares. There's always one guy. Brunson will get a lot of guys drafted because of his stuff. Like, honestly, Clayton would have never went in the top 20, I don't think, if it weren't for Brunson.
Jalen Brunson. I said that to someone last week. I was like, I said to someone, I was talking.
I like Clayton, but no, I don't think in the past he would have.
I love him.
He would have been like a late first, early second 5 years ago.
I think the three most influential misses from NBA GMs of all time for on our modern drafting. And I'd love like at Summer League to meet some people and run this by them and talk to like NBA people about this. I think Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, and Nikola Jokic each going where they did. Jokic and Giannis kind of being the setups and Luka going third being like the final. We need to stop making light of he didn't do it against Old Dominion. We need to stop caring about that. I think those are the three most influential prospects of our time with regard to like influencing the process and the scouting. Like now there's no sweaty gym in Siberia that goes unscouted. You know what I mean? Like at the 11U level, because
people got scarred from the Darko Milicic thing, but like it took years for people to readjust to like, okay, maybe there was one guy who wasn't what we thought he was. It doesn't mean that we should punish all of these other foreign prospects that very clearly have elements of their game. Although, to be fair, I hate that Luka is not this because we knew Luka was that guy before he got drafted. But with Jokic and Giannis, they both had these incredible things happen after they were drafted.
Giannis's weight and his conditioning.
Size, he grew. Giannis grew like 4 inches after he got to the NBA,
which allowed him to add like 80 pounds or something like not funny,
crazy.
like some actually like almost borderline concerning, like, oh my God.
And then Jokic was literally addicted to soda. And then he stopped drinking soda and was like, oh, now I'm going to become one of the greatest players of all time, which is a hilarious bit.
Wait, am I goated?
Wait a minute. The only person who had even close to their lottery at the time of the draft, Nikola Jokic, was Dean on Draft, had him 16th on his board.
Wow.
That's why the Raptors hired him.
Yeah. Wow. So I think Jokic is one, and then Giannis to me is like they just don't want to miss any Bambis. I guess like the word Bambi in general has had such a spike in the last 5 years. Like I used to hear it like colloquially talking with like grassroots basketball people here in New Jersey, and now it's like on like the biggest Instagram pages. It's like that quote from that. What is it? The Bucks assistant. Like you're looking for Bambi. You're looking for.
Well, that makes sense because Tidjon Saloon runs like he, is a baby deer. So,
hey now, and also maybe you could argue that a lot of European prospects are kind of like deer in headlights and pick and roll defense because they just don't see it out there.
No,
here we spam it like it's like every kids grow up playing 2K here and they get on the court and they're like, okay, so you're gonna come set a screen,
right? Because Kasparas Yakuchonis probably just got drafted based on the fact that he actually can run a pick and roll.
And like his performance early on in Summer League is freaking Heat fans out. And it's like,
right, because he doesn't have a big who can set screens. Like that's his whole game.
This is like, the same thing to me as the Grizzlies drafting Zach Edey with a top 10 pick and then being like, what if we didn't set a single screen all season? Like,
yeah. Why did you draft him?
Why didn't you draft Khalil Ware? Like you're acting like there wasn't a prospect viewed on the same level as your guy that fits what you're doing. Like what the hell?
Yeah.
Anyway, man.
Drafting for fit sometimes does actually make sense if you think about it.
It's it's less about fit and more like drafting with common sense. Like
drafting with a plan,
drafting with your brain,
optimizing your prospect. Like, that's what I meant.
Being like, hey, this guy's good at two things. Both of those things are finishing a play. I'm going to need someone who can make a play on my roster. The Utah Jazz. What the hell?
The perfect example of that before we always have the Trill tax, which I add 30 minutes every podcast. But my friend NBA Couchside Kevin, who's a Bulls fan, was like, this is why in 2020, when we were drafting, I wanted Tyrese Halliburton so badly, because we had Lauri Markkanen, who needed to be set up. We had Zach LaVine, who needed to be set up, and we didn't have a guy in the middle of them. And then what happened? They don't draft Halliburton, and then they end up having to trade all of those guys away eventually because they are not optimized in their role.
On that team, Pat Will is still there, and they're going to add Kuminga if they can. And
he's there for a while with that contract now that the CBA is moving the way it is.
$585. They're
$590.
90. They're and Sacramento and Chicago are currently like dumpster diving for Kuminga. Like, I just can't. And I was talking to someone out in Sacramento about this. Was it local guy? It might have been Drew. It might have been local guy on NBA Twitter.
I asked Jack from TikTok on all the questions.
I think it was him. It might have been him. It was either him or Drew.
Jack's awesome.
Jack Dan or Drew, yeah. And so I think it might have been Jack. We were talking about how like it makes so much sense that like the teams fighting over Jonathan Kuminga, like the right to pay him, are Sacramento and Chicago. Like that is loud. You know what I mean? Like that sometimes is loud. Like teams, like you said earlier, contenders that go hard at the margins. The Cleveland Cavaliers, like, arguably got worse this offseason. I don't think they did. You could argue they did.
I would. I mean, honestly, I love Lonzo Ball, but like he's not the same player he once was.
And it's a Mitchell Robinson-esque. This guy can swing you if he's healthy in the playoffs. If he was healthy enough before the playoffs to develop chemistry with his new teammates, and then also healthy enough to make it to the playoffs and on the court, and then stay on the court instead of getting hurt in game 3.
They overreacted to the Ty Jerome having a bad series. Ty Jerome was amazing in the Heat series and then was great in the regular season.
And they were like, oh, we saw Emmanuel quickly do this against us in 2021, and they let him walk to Toronto, and they paid him, and now they regret it. And it's like, that team
could have got him for $9 million. He literally makes less than Lonzo.
I think Merrill's so good. I think Merrill's
he's
legit.
Good. Yeah, he's solid.
I think he's one-dimensional offensively, which means you need guys like Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Allen to be good passers and set him up. Cool. You have the infrastructure to maximize a guy like Merrill. But if you're bringing in Ball, if you're adding Ball, which I would agree that for them specifically, sacrificing Okoro, by the way, didn't even talk about him with reference to Chicago. They have P. Will and Okoro, and they're trying to add Kuminga. But they dump Okoro for Ball, which I think is a good risk-reward proposition for a contending team. I get it. I think Okoro has been underrated every one of the last 3 years. I also think I really understand that move. That said, why would your next move, your corresponding move, why would it not be to bring back Jerome? Is your logic that Lonzo is the point guard, so now you need to replace the wing and bring back Merrill? Like,
I would play Lonzo more like
Lonzo's a wing.
I would play him like a playmaking wing.
That's what he is.
Yeah,
that's like
he doesn't have guards. He doesn't have like, he was already not the quickest in terms
of. He's not a point guard the way that people who care about what the word point guard means use the word.
You should use him like Kyle Anderson more than you should use him like, Tyrese Halliburton.
Preaching to the choir. I preach to the choir. I love Lonzo Ball. I think he's underrated. I hate his injuries. I hate his knees. I have like real hatred in my heart for his body.
He should have been an all-time role player. Like, he should have been so much more.
And a great locker room guy. Like, dude, you got to think. I know the meme of it all is something, but this is like when I get like really woke thinking about like my empathetic basketball analysis. Is like, this guy was in an NBA locker room of a team that was playing for Jack every night, having them smiling and dancing to his brother's music.
Absolutely amazing.
That's a locker room guy. That's a good brother. That's a good friend. That's a good dude. Like
maybe that was part of it too. The Cavs were like, we just want him around for the vibes, even if he isn't playing.
We need someone in this locker room who doesn't hate himself. Like I just
connect. I mean, their personalities. It seems like maybe they just need a nice glue guy in the locker room.
They need a glue. Like they need a not even like a. And maybe like George Niang was like ended up becoming like a fringe guy instead of a glue guy. You know, like maybe
a dog.
He might have glue guyed too close to the sun and ended up being a fringe guy. And like, so you know what I mean? Like Lonzo is an amazing player and story and everything. Like that said, he's a wing, a good one. And when you add him and replace Okoro with him, your corresponding move should be to bring Jerome back. So now that we've finished the Sixers podcast, very emotionally upset about the Cleveland Cavaliers offseason decision making.
Yeah. We're gonna do our grading the offseason later this week, and I'll probably have a whole thing on that. It was a little bit maddening to me. When the East is wide open next year, just run it back pretty much, and then kind of figure it out from there.
Also, you're bringing in Lonzo to be Merrill plus passing. That's just objectively what you're doing. So then why double up? Like you're getting redundant when scheme versatility is winning more championships than ever before. Regardless, Trill tax paid. I love your show, and it's why I wanted you on mine very selfishly. I appreciate you not selfishly taking the time to be here. It was awesome. I had a blast. I'm sure the listeners will note if they watched on Spotify or YouTube, because you can watch us on both, how much I smiled during the show. Trill, you want to plug any shows that just came out or that will be coming out soon that you want people to pay attention to? Or should we just be funneling people to the Patreon?
This is what I tell people. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like it, sign up for the Patreon. Like I use those as the advertisement for the Patreon. Yeah. We put everything on Patreon. We've paywall probably 60% of our content, 40% of it is public. And I hope you like it, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you giving me the platform.
I have to subscribe to it because I've scabbed your content. Like I'll be over at like Zach's house, and we watch the Aura draft. It's like,
one of the all-time episodes.
Harden was correctly valued in that draft, despite my other disagreements with Kylie. I think Harden was correctly valued in that draft.
She's such a legend. Yeah, but yeah, we'll definitely have to have you on a stream sometime soon.
I'm around. I don't know.
Whenever the Knicks have their next big move, we'll play. We have so many Knicks people in our sphere now because we have Schwinny, we have Noah Colwyn, we have you. So we'll have to diversify. Jason Buford comes on, my old podcast co-host. So we'll have to diversify as much as possible.
Schwinn and I have been friends for years, so
yeah, no, Schwinny's the man.
If you want a cat fight, bring us both on. Listen, thank you, man. Thanks for the time. Check out the Unoball Patreon, and keep tuning in right here to find out about all things NBA from A to Z. Presented as always by Ball is Life. That's Trill. I'm KP saying peace.